Welcome to The Village Lantern, a podcast for families living with hidden challenges, such as autism and other neurodiverse conditions, and for anyone else wanting to understand, love, and support. Our mission is to build understanding, empathy, and love for families living with one or more children who have hidden conditions that make life harder in one way or another. We call this Extra Zing.
If we give people the opportunity and we treat them like adults and like leaders, they will be. And if we, as a society, talk down to people and we make them feel inferior, and people with a disability definitely, then that's how they're going to act. But if we can hold space for people to step up and be themselves, they will lead. 100% of the time, they will lead.
Hey Jordan, how are you? So good to see you.
Hello, Anna. It's great to see you too. And it is great to have our first guest episode for season 2 of The Village Lantern right here.
Yes, we've got this awesome guy that you've brought through your connections called Dean Cohen. Can you tell us a bit about Dean?
Yeah, the big DC. He's a man who's done incredible things in the disability community. One at the foremost is he's the CEO of Flying Fox.
Awesome.
An awesome organization. And they run camps for children, young adults, adults who live with a disability, and their staff are all volunteer young people with the most amount of energy, the biggest hearts, and it's honestly an inspirational place.
Do you know that my goosebumps never stop coming when I hear about this concept? I love what it's about. I love who they're serving and I love who's playing a role. Did you work at the camp at some point?
Yeah, that was one of the most influential experiences I had in the disability community. When I was 18, I got involved as a volunteer there, and it's an inspiring place. It's an empowering place for the buddies, for the campers. You'll hear about it all because we've got Dean coming on now. It's an incredible episode. He's an amazing person, an amazing storyteller, and it was just a privilege to get him on. So enjoy.
It was so good. I can't wait for people to hear it. We hope you love it.
Here we go. We're very, very privileged and honoured to have Dean Cohen here today from Flying Fox. Dean is someone that I've known personally and professionally for quite a while now, and it's honestly just so good to be able to bring him in here. He's got an incredible story to tell. He's got an incredible manner of storytelling, and we're really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So welcome to the podcast, Dean.
Thank you for having me.
No worries at all. So, Dean, a lot about what we're going to be talking about today is this community that you've built through Flying Fox. Can you tell us a little bit about Flying Fox and what you do and why you do it?
Absolutely. So first up, definitely I played a role in building the community, but it's not just me. There's a whole amazing network of young people that have put blood, sweat and tears into building this over the journey. So I can share the story on their behalf, but it really is a collective effort. We kickstarted Flying Fox in 2014, ran a camp for 19 young people with a disability, supported by 39 Year 12 students who had just graduated from school, and literally 2 weeks after they finished VCE, they put their books down and then they were on camp with us for 4 days, supporting a group of young people to have fun, make friends, supporting them to feel safe away from home, often for the first time. And that's really 8 years later, I can tell, I'll fill in the gaps, but 8 years later, that's still what we do. We connect young people with and without a disability through fun social experiences. And it's actually not more complicated than that, which is the beauty of Flying Fox.
And what do you do on these camps?
Fun, anything fun. So we go kayaking and on the ropes course, and we obviously go on the Flying Fox, and we just do anything fun that we can come up with. There's a few traditions, of course. The last night of every camp is a talent show. And the beauty of the talent show is that we have a network of people who are definitely talented, and they've got their own unique quirks and personalities and value that they bring to the world, but they very rarely get to show it. And so for 2 or 3 hours on the last night of every camp, you can have this group of young people who are up on stage sharing who they are with the world, and you just see everyone's, well, I mean, if they're not bawling their eyes out, you just see everyone light up at at the amazing talents and skills and personalities that we all get the real privilege of seeing that, unfortunately, a lot of the world doesn't get to see. So we have the talent show. We have, what are some of our other traditions? We do a bonfire, a sing-along that, Jordan, you've played at, haven't you?
Yes, yeah. I played 5 years ago at Flying Fox Camp. I also remember for the talent show, I was with a boy, we'll call him Jay, and Jay was quite a quiet kid. And, we worked really closely with him for, the days we were on camp, trying to, bring him out of his shell. And the talent show, I remember, he ran on stage and he sang Gangnam Style. Absolutely blasted it. Made me and the other buddy dance beside him. He was beaming. He finished, everyone did a silent clap, and he ran out the door beaming straight into his room, said, "I'm done for the night, I killed it."
Mic drop.
Yeah, literally it was the biggest mic drop I've ever seen. And moments like that are just, that was 5 years ago and I remember it so clearly, and it really is special.
So did you know he was going to do that, Jordan? Had you rehearsed?
I had inklings. I could tell that there were certain songs and dances that, seemed to bring him out of his shell a bit.
I feel like you were a bit more worried that you didn't get enough stage time.
No, for that one time, I was happy to be the
share the spotlight.
Yeah, I was happy to share the spotlight.
But that's the beauty of all of this, that you're the backup dancer in that story. And that's what our buddies are. We call our volunteers buddies. We've got this network of young people. There's about 700 people that have volunteered and been trained up by the organisation over the last 8 years to volunteer on our programs, on our social experiences, camps, weekend getaways, and then to go on and work in the disability sector, whether it's through Care Now or other businesses. And the opportunity to learn to be the backup dancer, to support someone to showcase their talents is incredible, because so often in the world of disability, we see people holding the hands of someone with a disability rather than letting that person walk in front of them and lead the way.
Yeah.
And of course we want to walk side by side, but sometimes we actually as a society need to learn to take a step back and give other people the spotlight. And through the world of Flying Fox, we've got these 600 or 700 or 800 young people who have learnt about the incredible offering that young people with a disability bring to the world, and we can support them to bring that out. So we need to keep being backup dancers.
I love that, Dean. That's awesome. Can I just ask, right at the beginning, what was it that made you and your co-founders think we need to create a camp for kids with disabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story, I fell into the world of disability when I got a call from a parent of a young guy with autism straight after I finished school. Finished school in 2009 and got a call from this mum who said that she just wanted someone to have a kick in the park with her son. He needed a friend, and she heard that I might be someone who'd be interested. And I didn't know what autism was, but I went along sunny Friday afternoon and did that for a little while. Ended up developing a great relationship with this guy, and we still have a great relationship now, a bunch of years later. But through that experience, his mum was a teacher before she had him, and she was incredibly devoted to not just supporting him to live his best life, but to training people like myself up to grow our passion and also our skills to support all people with disability to live their best lives. So I was in the right place at the right time, had that amazing experience, did a commerce degree, was never going to go into the corporate world, even though my accountant father probably expected me to. And after having some great experiences in the disability sector, combined with my own personal experiences going on summer camps, growing up through the youth group that I was part of, we saw that there was a gap in those sorts of social programs, and we were just a bunch of people who had some sort of similar but different touch points with the disability sector. I think of the 7 founders, not one of us has any personal connection or any family members that have a disability.
I find that amazing. And I think that's one of the things that's so exciting to me. And I had the same experience when I met Jordan and with what he was doing with Care Now. As a parent of a child who cannot go on a normal camp or neurotypical camp, the idea that she could go somewhere and feel safe and that we know that she would have a good time, I think I'm on the waiting list.
Yeah.
But
we'll have to get you off the waiting list.
Yeah, that would be amazing. But the idea that a group of young people have committed so much time and effort and love to this cause for me, it's like, it just makes me cry. It's beautiful, and there is absolutely a need.
And the beauty of it is that it's not sacrifice from these young people who are getting involved. It's not I am sacrificing my time and enjoyment of life or my ability to go get a job. It's that this is actually this coexists with all the other things that I love doing. And one of the beauties of Flying Fox is you can be an active volunteer and come on like 2 camps a year. So it really does fit maybe with the millennial lifestyle of I want to go to the 21st this weekend and then I'll go on camp next.
Yeah, but it keeps you fresh as well, right?
But it keeps you fresh, and it's fun. And we're connecting with people in a fun social environment where it's not, maybe to be crude, it's not feeding someone or it's not, we do personal care and our volunteers all get trained up in personal care and they're not 100% expected to support a participant with that side of their life if both the participant and the volunteer don't want that. But it is definitely a part of life. But that's very secondary to the core focus of let's just bring groups of people together to have fun. And it's something that I think people get a lot of pleasure out of, that this is a really cool experience. I can go away for a couple of nights with some friends and some of those friends happen to have a disability.
And it's personal. I think that's what's so nice, because you have that close care, one-on-one care. If you're a camp leader in a camp where you've got hundreds of kids, you don't get to develop that personal relationship quite as much because you're spending all that time with one little person.
Yeah.
And that's gorgeous. In such a short time, you can get really close.
Absolutely. Each camp is the foundation for long-term relationships, and there's no expectation that the long-term relationship will develop. At worst, it's an incredible 4 days together, but at best, it's the foundation that can lead to expansion of social networks for people with disability who, I don't need to tell you guys or the listeners that limited social networks is one of the biggest problems that exists in the sector, and we are able to facilitate the building of a community by really pumping in young people who are at least aware of the differences that exist amongst different people in the world, and they can figure out how to engage with them on a level that is the most appropriate to bring the best out of that person. And it, as a result, means that if I had a friend who had a disability who was having their 18th or 21st, I'm going to get invited now. And they're going to have a group of 10 or 20 or 30 people at that party when maybe without this community they wouldn't. And hopefully in the future without this community, that they will, because we are as a society getting so much better and so much more aware of celebrating the different unique individuals in the world, that maybe Flying Fox won't need to play that role in the future.
I think also a huge reason why the community is growing and people feel so passionate and become so passionate despite maybe not having any connection in their family or anything like that growing up with disability is something that you guys advocate for a lot, is the two-way nature of everything that you do. And you're not coming to Flying Fox just to give and be a great person. Like, you're forming a relationship and you're learning and you're gaining sometimes much more than you're able to give. I feel that way. I feel like I've gained and learned so much more from the disability community so far than I've been able to give back. I'm curious to hear why you think that that's such a strong feeling that people experience, and what are some of those very pertinent experiences and I don't want to say lessons, but things that you gain from interacting meaningfully with someone who lives with a disability and maybe sees the world differently or in a more unique way than yourself.
Yeah, there's so many different ways we could take the conversation from there. The first thing that me personally that I've benefited from my friendships with our participants is the lack of judgment. That as a society, I wouldn't say there's a lack of judgment out there, but amongst our participants and many people we connect with, there really is an incredible support of their peers. And it's just amazing to see. In the talent show, for example, the first people to give a standing ovation are the other participants. It's not the volunteers leading that. And I think we can learn a lot from that general support of our peers. And then more generally, I think that the way we've built that mutually beneficial ideology that exists within the camps is that everyone participates in everything. We don't run a camp that people with a disability get an opportunity to go kayaking and there's a whole bunch of volunteers watching. Everyone's doing everything together, and we can debate the opportunities for Flying Fox to be more and more inclusive into the future and to provide opportunities for our participants to also be leaders and to keep working through that into the future. But at the moment, at the very least, what's going on each camp is everyone's involved in everything. So it's got this very inclusive nature about it, even if at the end of the day, we are a disability organisation that is providing opportunities specifically for people with disability. And I'm aware of that challenge as we move towards striving for real, true inclusion into the future and breaking down what segregation and integration might mean. But at the very least, the nature is warm and inclusive and maybe above all else, safe.
How do you said you got 700 odd volunteers on your books. How do you, why do they come? How do you, I think I've said this before to Jordan when I was young. I was I think I was a nice enough person, but I was very self-centered, I think, which is kind of what you expect of people in their, late teens, early 20s. Is that kind of how old they are? So why? The age group. What do you think? Do you think it's a generational thing? Are you a brilliant salesperson? What do you think it is that's bringing these people who otherwise would not sort of have a connection? Yeah.
So first up, the big thing is that the next generation definitely is incredible. For all the nonsense that we might see in the media and on the news about the selfishness of young people coming through, that's just not my experience. And there's a million people around me that would agree with what I'm saying, that the next generation is going to build a more inclusive world. To be honest, the next generation is going to build a more inclusive world to fix the mistakes of past generations. So there's a real opportunity here to connect with people at a younger age, to challenge them on the world that they want to see and to then support them to build that. And that's what we're doing. We have created an organisation where our volunteers don't come and participate in a camp and then leave, but they feel a deep sense of ownership over the organisation. So they can take lots of different roles. They can help facilitate educational programs for their peers, or they can be what we call team leaders, which is like the head of a group on camp, or they can come work with us. Every one of our staff started off as our volunteers as well. So there's this real community where people feel ownership and they are in turn empowered to run that community the way they want to. So feedback isn't, submit a complaint online. Feedback is, let's go have a coffee, and then I'm going to hold a mirror up, and then you're going to figure out how you're going to fix that for our community. It's not you telling me that something's wrong with Flying Fox and you're complaining to a staff member and we move on. It's, we are going to sit together and we are going to make sure that Flying Fox can be the best organisation possible. I don't think that exists very often, where young people are treated with real respect as leaders who have so much to offer an organisation or so much to contribute to addressing a cause. And there are definitely opportunities for every organisation to do that. When you're looking for volunteers, don't make them stuff envelopes. Let them run the program of converting that into an online social media marketing campaign that's going to communicate with people so much more effectively than whatever the envelopes are doing. Give people the opportunity to run programs and projects, and they will make it far better than it's ever been. And I think that's a big reason why people are involved. I think another reason is, let's just enjoy that it's fun.
I totally stuffed envelopes when I was 21. I actually did. I worked in a law firm and like in the mailroom, and I literally stuffed envelopes. It was very boring.
Yeah. And think about what every energetic, passionate 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old can contribute to the world.
Yeah.
And those are wasted years unless we can give people a microphone and
so true.
Let them contribute in a way that they want to.
Yeah. It's awesome.
And have fun while they're doing it.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
Number one. So I find, the conversation and everything you're saying about youth super interesting. And for our listeners out there that, aren't as familiar with Flying Fox, basically the whole team, apart from like the board, are young people. Dean, I'm sure you still identify as a young person.
At the ripe old age of 30.
Exactly. At the ripe old age of 30, am I correct in saying you're the oldest person though in the staff team?
Yeah, there's two of us that are 30, and the joke that we've got is when we started the organisation, I was 22, and youth meant 18 to 22. And then all of a sudden youth meant 18 to 25, and now it might mean 18 to 30.
Yeah. I can tell you 50 is the new 30.
Nice. So we'll be a youth-run organisation for a little while,
But that's incredible. I mean, Flying Fox is a huge player in the disability space, and it is so well organised and has massive impact, and it's run by young people. I want to bring it back to sort of the origins of Flying Fox and also your own mindset journey. Before Flying Fox, you were heavily involved in the youth movement, which also empowers young volunteers to care and give a crap about the world. How did that experience shape your mindset and allow you to see what could be the potential for taking that youth passion and putting it into an organised professional structure?
Yeah, so you obviously got to contribute to this too because we were part of the same group. I just was a few years before.
Yep.
The organisation that I was part of growing up was entirely run by 18, 19-year-olds with one designated responsible adult making sure that no one got really badly hurt. But we had full autonomy to run the organisation how we saw fit. And that meant that if we stuffed up, it was on us. And if we succeeded, we could celebrate that together. And I was the treasurer. I think you were as well. Were you not? No, you weren't.
When I was on my SCHNUT program, so my year overseas, I was the cool. treasurer of
So we're responsible for the boring things as much as we are for the fun things. I was responsible for making sure there was a budget for the camps that we ran in that organisation. And that's actually really empowering. We don't just need to give people the exciting projects. We can give people every element of the organisation and they'll run with it. And that's what I learned out of that let people see their ownership over the entire organisation and they'll feel that deeply and they'll take it with them day to day.
And that's a wild experience, just by the way, that you were 22, 21, when you were the treasurer of a huge organisation, Australia-wide, bringing in lots of money from, big organisations, and you're trusted. You're making decisions. I think allowing people to rise into positions of responsibility, like people can take on so much more than they think they can. I mean, I think particular, like when I talk about youth empowerment, I often talk about the treasurer role at the youth movement as being the most wild experience.
Yeah.
But 21, you're in your second year of commerce and you're making financial decisions over a sum of money that most adults never see in their life. Like if you don't feel like you are deserving responsibility after that,
absolutely.
What would?
And that's both with our participants and our volunteers now, our campers and our buddies, that if we give people the opportunity and we treat them like adults and like leaders, they will be. And if we, as a society, talk down to people and we make them feel inferior, both, we're talking young people being made to feel inferior, and people with a disability definitely, then that's how they're going to act. But if we can give people if we can hold space for people to step up and be themselves, they will lead. 100% of the time, they will lead. Maybe we'll have, the odd volunteer here and there that gives us a hard time, but 99% of the time, they'll step up and lead and absolutely kill it. And you slipped in the word there, trust. We have to genuinely trust that they'll do a good job and not micromanage that. Let them actually step up and do it, and they will absolutely kill it.
And also be open-minded about how it will be done and what the outcome will look like, because everyone leads in different ways. There's different versions of leadership, and
absolutely.
Being able to step back and allow someone to do something perhaps in a way that you wouldn't do it takes a certain amount of self-regulation, doesn't it? But then it allows you to see, I didn't think of that, but that's a genius way to get to
And to go back to, you mentioned you want to talk more about the origin story. We had a good idea, and it was not a revolutionary idea necessarily. It was a camp. Like camps have existed for a long time, and it was the revolutionary idea was that it was youth run. That was only able to happen because we had incredible adults around us who could support us to do that. So our first funders who gave us a $5,000 donation and we fell off our chair. It's like that's unbelievable. Why are they giving 22-year-old me this money to try something? And it's because they embody this idea of young people have fresh perspectives. They're not burdened by the mistakes of the past. They can just dive headfirst in and make something happen. And that's just an incredible opportunity that we do get every generation. In every generation, young people coming through can and do create incredible change. I'm just really happy that that's now happening, at least in our community and our wider network, that's happening in the disability sector.
Well, you're harnessing it, right? Like that's the role that you're playing now, is to harness that energy and harness that capability and potential.
And be a platform for people to develop that passion so that when they want to create and when they want to build, they do it in the disability sector.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which Flying Fox has inspired so many people with encouragement from Dean and the whole staff to go on and do things. there's countless organizations, programs, businesses that are now really contributing to the disability space that are from people who are impassioned by Flying Fox. And that impact's incredible.
I must say, when Dylan Alcott was awarded Australian of the Year, I did think this is a year to try and really push where there's a lot of profile. He's doing a lot to build awareness. It's a really important year to try and push more.
Absolutely. And we're talking here as well, and on your podcast generally, you said about invisible disabilities. And I think that's the next opportunity for the incredible advocates like Dylan Alcott that are raising the profile of this conversation. There's an amazing piece out there at the moment from an advocate who has a physical disability saying, I don't want to muff the language because it's his, not mine, but something to the effect of, please don't judge me for not loving my disability like Dylan Alcott does. And I think that that's a really interesting sentiment. And we have a lot of families and participants who are still really grappling with this question of how disability fits into their life, and are they owning it and embracing it, or is this just a challenge that they're striving to overcome? And it's not my place to tell them how to be, but I definitely am really looking forward to the conversation over the next 12 months with Dylan Alcott being given the spotlight, for it not just to be about incredible people like himself, but it's about everyone in the sector who has just such a huge range of experiences, and we're not hearing those experiences from some of our participants, for example, who have very complex disabilities and don't get the airtime that they need as well to share their stories.
I mean, it's not as good a story, right? I know a lot of people with autism, and certainly with my daughter who lives with it, there's a bit of an understanding that if you're kind of high functioning, you're probably a genius.
Sure.
You'll have some kind of amazing gift. Not everyone does. Not everyone has something amazing that goes with it that kind of makes you feel really proud and you can kind of represent for yourself. And that's really hard.
And let's just accept that there are challenges.
Yeah.
This is hard, and that's why we all do the work that we do, because we live in a society that hasn't yet figured out entirely how to support people with different approaches to the world and different behavioural challenges. And if we talk so much about building a ramp instead of having stairs up to the building, but what about the sensory experiences of people? What about someone walking into a supermarket and there being so many colours and sounds? Okay, there's an hour every now and then at different supermarkets that's a sensory friendly hour, but it's not many people that are considering that.
Or even the social standards of that space. Something even more niche, someone not being able to navigate the actual interactions that are happening. Like there's so many more complex things than putting a ramp. I think it's really interesting, what you brought up, Dean, and Anna, you'll 100% be able to speak to this, because the tone of disability advocacy is really hard. And I think that the organisation I represent, the organisation that Dean represents, it's really positive. It's a lot of love. It's really empowering, and that's amazing. We love it, and we really want people to come in here and be filled with confidence. But that's not a reflection of the disability space or disability advocacy. There's what we've said, that there's a really hard way to talk about disability, where on one side, love, empowerment, inclusivity. On the other side, some of the toughest situations and environments that you'll ever walk into and see. And it's really hard to not ostracize either side when speaking about disability, because you can speak about amazing things and people will be listening feeling completely removed. And we've had that, listeners who are like, it sounds great. My life isn't like that. My life's really hard. Absolutely. How do you include everyone, and what is the tone of disability advocacy?
I think I don't have an answer to that, but I do think that through COVID, so we've seen a growth of mental health awareness in the last 10 years, since Beyond Blue and Jeff Kennett did a really good job of trying to build awareness and understanding of mental health challenges. I think in some ways that's quite a good grounding to start with, because it's more socially acceptable now to talk about, I'm not happy, I'm struggling, I'm having a hard time. And whether that's because of your personal life or because of your financial situation or because of your disability, there is a bit more of a space to be able to put that on the table and say, it's not all great. I think up until before that, everyone kept their hard stuff very private, especially in Australia with our English kind of stiff upper lip culture that is still kind of pervades a little bit. I think that the ability to talk about, yes, things are hard. I mean, that's one of the things that I do. I think I've joked quite a bit about how I'm a oversharer, chronically oversharer, and that sometimes I suffer from post-traumatic oversharing disorder. But I can't help but be honest about the challenges that we continue to face in our family. And I feel in some ways like it's kind of my responsibility to speak it out loud so that other people hear it, because so many families that I know just keep at home quiet and private, struggling in silence.
And I think that my role as someone who doesn't have a disability or even a family member is to hold space for people to share their stories the way they want to. And I'm fortunate that I get to do that as my day job. But if someone wants to share the warm fuzzies or someone wants to share the challenges, I'm happy to have both conversations, and I'm happy to create a platform for people to share that if they want to, like you both are as well. But I think one of the potential negative implications of this really this conversation about resilience or about mental health acceptance is the lack of resilience that sometimes comes from that. And I think sometimes what I see, again, we're talking about being sensitive in our language, so I'm conscious that this might not be the best thing to say in the entire world, but I see that we as an organisation have sometimes much higher standards for what our participants can achieve than a lot of people in that participant's life. And that's because we see the best that they have to offer, because we're having fun on camp for 4 days. We don't see the day-to-day challenges that families face. Obviously, we talk, we get to know them, but we don't see I've been at school all day and I've held it in and now I'm going to let loose at the end of the day. That doesn't happen on camp nearly as much because it's fun. But we have to come together as partners, and for us as an organisation, we have to come together as partners with the participants and the families to highlight that we can support and this next generation of unbelievable advocates and activists can support to help people see their potential and then actualise it. Where there are lots of families around us, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. There are lots of families around us who experience pretty profound challenges that it's really hard for them to see that potential. And I'm conscious of challenging that conversation too.
Yeah, I think it's such a good point. And I think you actually need to go into a different setting. You need that. So for a child to have a positive experience like that, you have to be out of the day-to-day.
Yeah.
So I think there's a beautiful opportunity for kids to see that about themselves, and I think like anything, every time an individual has a positive experience, that lays a foundation. Maybe that was a one-off. Do it again. I can start to believe, right? Start to believe. And I think that by creating that offsite and then kids coming home, as long as you can educate the parents and sort of gently share what that stretch is, one, keep sending the kid, keep having those experiences. But I think that parents are going to get something out of that too. And I mean, everyone's going to have a different sort of attitude, but hopefully if you've got an open mind as a parent and you're hopeful, all parents have hope.
Definitely.
Maybe sometimes they give up a little bit and there are times when you think, this is not, but there's always a little glimmer of hope. And when you would get some kind of feedback like that, they had 4 days, they did X, Y, and Z, and the parents stunned and shocked, but also thrilled.
Yeah.
I think that plants a seed in the parent as well.
Absolutely.
So I think you have to be in a different environment to break that day-to-day challenge. I think that's okay, and it's kind of ideal. But you'd want it to be ongoing. Just a one-off is not going to really cut it. But secondly, I think as much as can be fed back, and the child comes back positive, having had a good time. The parents have had a break. There's something massive about that as well. You've sort of got more energy to get back into the hard stuff when you've had a couple of days off. So I think that's okay. I think that if there are some parents who are closed-minded about that, I'm not sure what you do about that. But
and it's also about accepting that people have their challenging experiences, and how they respond to that is up to them. But it's also something that we can engage in if the families want. But we have hilarious stories, there'll be families who say, I'm not going to send bathers with my kid because they're not going to swim. Just do us a favour, just send them in case. And of course they swim. Yeah. Because all their friends are swimming because you're on camp together. So it's like the little things as well, that it's just the little bit of open-mindedness to the potential is such a mindset shift, and it's so hard for some people, and that's so understandable.
Yeah.
Because there are challenges. We've been speaking about the challenges, but just send the bathers.
Oh, it's so good. And I mean, I think that's another one of those examples. That's all kids, all kids, regardless of disability or not, or neurodiversity or not. You get into a pattern at home, go to someone else's house. Oh, no, I don't eat chicken or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, they ate it at our house. It's very similar. I think
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's hard as a parent of a child with extra needs to remember that they're also just kids who behave like other kids who in different settings, might feel more included, more brave, whatever it is, I think the one-on-one care is really appealing, or at least whatever the low ratio.
Yeah, we've got a very high ratio.
Yeah.
We've got 2 volunteers to every participant on most of our programs, plus another staff member, at least another staff member to every 1 or 2. So there's
and
a ton
that
of
is
people.
gold, because even at home, our kids don't usually have that much support. And I know with my daughter, she would love that. She would love the attention. She would love that connection. But she would feel braver and safer if she had 2 great young enthusiastic people around her to do things. So, I mean,
then what
you can't
happens-
do that in many other scenarios in your life.
Absolutely. And then what happens is you take the love from that relationship for 4 days, and both participants and the volunteers, but in this context, the participants, they take that love with them in every experience that they have for the next 3 months until their next camp.
Yes.
And it gives this confidence boost that actually I can belong, I am worth a lot.
Yes.
And I can achieve. And I think those relationships are just so powerful, even if it is just a 4-day relationship that doesn't go anywhere after that. It still gives people an injection of love that they take with them.
Yeah, look, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the best way to describe Flying Fox, it doesn't quite sit right to say, it's a business, a company, an organization. I think what it is at its heart, what it's become at its heart is a community. And I think that ties in, particularly the last, 5 minutes of the conversation, starting with how do we advocate for families that are, wanting to feel empowered but having a hard time, all the way to how do we get these kids to see the best in themselves. It's all, the conversation's continually tied back to this. Everything comes back to feeling a sense of belonging, feeling like you have a place to, if you want to, share your opinion and have your voice be heard, but also maybe just hear other people and know that that's what you're feeling. I really do see Flying Fox as such a strong community and inspiring a growing community that's growing past Flying Fox. How do you see Flying Fox's role in creating this community? And has it been intentional? Like, have you done things to create community, or have things just sort of become that way?
For me, it's definitely intentional. Maybe for the first 12 months, it was a little bit too much about me. But after that, I worked really hard for it not to be. And there are lots of our volunteers who wouldn't know who I am. And there are lots of people who are driving different parts of the community on their own. And if nothing else, people, I think, do and need to into the future feel really empowered to be part of the community how they want to. And that is a really conscious effort from myself and our team. I think it's really interesting that we still have this core staff team who runs the organisation. But you're right, we're not actually talking about the organisation. We're talking about a network of passionate young people who come together to do cool things. And the next challenge is to empower more of our participants to feel like active members of that community, not recipients of the services that are provided by the community. And that's something that I'm really conscious of, that it belongs to all 1,000 people who, participants and volunteers, all 1,000 young people who are involved as core members of the community. And that's the next step.
I think you can make that work.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
sure you've got plenty of ideas about different ways that you could do that, but I
there's
think that's
too many.
absolutely doable.
I'll tell
Too
you
many.
one idea is we do these weekend getaways where we take 6 participants and 7 or 8 staff away to our very own holiday house, which is a whole another amazing story. But what I really want to do is I want to get a couple of our older participants to invite their friends over to their place, kick their parents out for a weekend, and do a sleepover, and we can just help facilitate that. So that's them
so
being
good.
empowered to host their
Yes.
own friends at their own home, cook and clean, and do and run activities for each other. We'll do that one.
Yeah.
What are some other ideas? Before we spoke about, we're more speaking about, the individuals in the organisation living without a disability rising up into positions of responsibility and rising to the occasion. What are things that you guys have done and are planning to do for your participants those in the organization that live with the disability, it's the same mindset to be able to rise into a position of responsibility and raise the expectations of themselves. What are some other things that you're doing that really are pushing them to take on more?
Yeah, well, we're not doing enough is the first thing. Some of the things that we do are we have some of our participants who go and do talks with us at different schools and other organisations, and the next step is for that to be a paid role. Why would they share their experience? Why would they have to share their experience and expertise always as a volunteer? There's a place for volunteers, but they should be paid to do that work. So that's one thing. But then there's a million roles on camp. We've got one participant who is excited about being a chef one day. So he's been on some of our weekend getaways as the chef.
I can imagine my daughter when she's older wanting to be a leader. She actually
Absolutely.
loves looking after younger kids. So
Absolutely.
now she's too young. But if she's had enough of those experiences, with the support of someone else, possibly for the anxiety factor, could absolutely be a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that support is certainly not someone who would need to, I don't know your daughter obviously, but in a lot of cases that wouldn't need to be a support person who's holding their hand day to day.
No.
That's someone who is just a safety net.
Yeah,
they're a mentor,
yeah.
they're on the side if you need.
Exactly.
And that safe bubble that we can create can apply to our participants taking every role in the organisation.
Yeah.
Higher Up has a board observer program for people with a disability to join their board. Love to explore those sorts of ideas. Really, every level, every layer of the organisation and the community can and should include people with a disability as equals, and that's the next frontier for Flying Fox.
Can I ask about scale? Like, how many kids can you accommodate? How long is your waiting list? And how can more kids get access?
So we have, at the moment, we've got about 150 or so active participants. We've got, this year we'll probably have 300 or so active volunteers that'll come through, and we've got a waiting list of another 150 participants. We are still turning away volunteers, which is an incredible problem to have, but also why should people miss out? So we are trying to grow both the participant side and the volunteer side, and the goal is to run 100 weekend getaways a year and 8 of our bigger camps.
And how many are you doing now?
So now we're doing, we'll do 30 or 35 of the weekend getaways this year and 6 camps. So
I like that. I like those numbers.
we're growing and we're definitely striving to tackle the wait list. The best way for us to do that is to keep getting more and more inquiries so that we're forced to.
So what do you need? Yeah, so what do you need if you had all these knockings on the door? What would you need to make it?
Yeah, it's a good question. We need to just have the resources as an organisation. I think that's what it comes down to. And then a little bit more creativity about how we empower other members of our community to run programs themselves so that it becomes a self-running network where, Jordan, you can say, I'm going to take 5 participants and a few friends to the Flying Fox holiday house, Toffa House, and hang out there for a weekend. Is that okay? And we say, absolutely. And here's a budget from us to go do it.
And so how are you funded? Is it just through fees for camp, or
So
do you
about
have
half.
sponsorship?
Yeah, about half of our revenue as an organisation is NDIS, and then the other half is
Right.
philanthropy. And fundraising is a massive part of our organisation because fundraising is community building as well. And people can not always contribute time, but they can contribute money. Contributing money for our funders doesn't mean writing a check. It means coming and visiting camp, being part of it, giving us advice and also hearing our ideas too. When we make mistakes, being open to hearing about those mistakes and then working with us to overcome them. And we have the most incredible supporters who just have helped us be probably 2 or 3 times the size that we would have if their support didn't exist. And it's just, they're core members of our community as equals. Okay, they write the checks and we run the programs, and we've got volunteers who put in the hard yards, but altogether we're just equal members of the community doing incredible things together. And we've got funders that have been with us since the start and hopefully will be with us forever into the future. So it's a pretty cool part of the organisation as well.
There's so many families I know that would just love to have the opportunity to send their kids along.
Oh, absolutely. And we want to provide opportunities for as many people as possible. One of the other gaps is that as I don't know if it's come up on this podcast with other guests, but there's a massive gap for NDIS funding for people outside of cities or outside of financially literate whatever communities, and I'm really conscious of Flying Fox playing a role in connecting with people who either aren't getting NDIS funding at all, maybe they're not citizens, or
it's pretty hard to navigate.
Yeah, it's a single parent who doesn't have the time because
Yeah.
they're just trying to survive, or
Yeah.
it's someone who isn't financially literate or doesn't speak English. There's just such exclusion still that exists. And fortunately, we've got philanthropic support from people who would back us in a second. If we said we've got 20 participants who aren't getting any NDIS funding and that camp's going to cost us $50,000 to run, I'm 100% confident we could get that money and those people could get the opportunities. So, I mean, back to the question
takes time as well, though, right?
Absolutely.
So you do your plan in like September, and then you get the money, and whatever, and
Absolutely.
the amount of kind of admin. But yeah, there's. I mean, I think the NDIS is fantastic, but yeah, it could go.
So many opportunities, so many incredible things happening in that space. The fact that there's funding available, the fact that we're even having these conversations and the government's brought the topic to light is amazing. And for people who are missing out, we want to be able to play a role in their lives in the meantime while they're navigating the system. So, but to your question of what's stopping us from growing, nothing. We just got to do it. And we've got to sit down as a team, and we've got to keep giving ourselves a kick up the bum and see that we can continue having a greater impact on the lives of more and more people. And that's what we strive to do every day, and we're trying to do more and more of it. So it might take us another 6 months or a year or two, but the goal is to meet the demand of our wait list, definitely.
Amazing.
Dean, like, God bless you, Dean. Really, I mean, as a parent, I say this from the bottom of my heart, like the opportunity to be able to send your child somewhere to grow, to be loved, to stretch, and to get a break is, it's really, it's life-changing.
But the beauty is that we have fun while we do it.
Of course. Oh,
So,
yeah, of course.
like, that's at the end of it.
It is the beauty of it, because it makes you feel good sending your child off. Yeah. It's not like, sorry, hope it's okay. It might be a bit of that, but it's, that you're going to get the best out of your kid, and the beautiful things that your kid can bring. So it's lovely to know that someone else can enjoy that.
I've got one sort of last theme that I really want to hear from Dean. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm always blown away when I get the chance to chat to you. I mean, Dean and I have been in each other's life for quite a few years now. When I started my youth movement, Dean was the big macha of the organisation in his last year, and I was in my first ever sort of experience of the camps. I think we've both had a lot of inspiration from that time. So I was 15. But every time I get to chat to you, the insight, the knowledge, the empathy that you bring to a conversation, to a space around the disability community is inspiring. And I truly believe that Flying Fox is revolutionary and has been an absolute core of the inspiration of the youth passion that is now permeating through the disability community, the opportunities that you provide for those living both with and without disability, the relationship mentality that you foster through your trainings, where you truly advocate for genuine, two-way, respectful connections. I have never seen a place do it better and with a more strong impact than Flying Fox. And I'm really glad that hopefully we're going to be able to have some guests who aren't as familiar with Flying Fox listen and be introduced to this incredible organization, and people who are lifelong avid fans of Flying Fox be able to hear, a different side and a bit more about the depth. And what I want to bring it back to for the last sort of thing is it's 2014. It's 8 years ago. Flying Fox is in its early stages, and you're just navigating this world of disability. It's been a long 8 years. I'm sure also it's gone by in a second. What are the biggest changes you've seen in the community? The biggest changes you've seen in how people engage with the disability community, and the biggest changes you've seen in yourself and your own personal mindset of the world and how you relate to it?
Yeah, lots of questions.
Have you got 5 minutes?
500 hours. The biggest change that I've seen is the optimism. So even amongst a lot of our participants' families who experience the challenges we've been talking about, there is definitely an optimism that exists. And I don't know that it always did. When we started, before our first camp, we had one family who said to us, yeah, we're not going to send our kid on this first camp. Well, we'll see how you go the first time, and then we'll send them on the second one. And that's fine, because it's new and exciting, but we're getting less and less of those conversations, because families can, I think, now understand that there are other people in their lives who they can trust. And sometimes it's us, and other times it's the Care Now team and others. But we can trust others to help us live our best lives. And there are a lot of people that are much more open than I think there were when we started. And a lot of that's...
It takes a village, right? And that's the old school way of remembering that humans need community and
connection,
each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I think optimism, I think the willingness to trust is definitely improved. 100% I've seen, all these hundreds of young people develop a passion for the disability sector. We've seen some innovation, but maybe not enough from people across the sector. There's a need for more grassroots change and people who are coming up with world-class ideas. There needs to be more organisations, I think, like higher up, who are going full steam ahead with incredible founders who are more passionate about the sector than any others that I've met. And if you haven't had Jordan and Laura on the podcast, you need to, because people like them are shaping the approach to innovation in the disability sector, and there's just a need for more of it. But there has been some. I have seen for our community a sense of inclusion that I don't think existed before we started. It's not just because of us, but the world's gotten better over the last 10 years, and hopefully we've played a small part in that. But people with a disability don't just have the 2 or 3 people in their lives who aren't family members and aren't paid to be there anymore. There's far broader social networks on the whole, at least within our community, and I think that's really powerful. And for myself, I'm probably not needed as much anymore. Like, that's really cool. I've seen that I and my peers and people younger than me can create, and there's a really supportive community around us who will support others to keep creating, keep building, and I don't know, maybe that's in part job done for us.
Oh, I'm sure there's so many more things you can do, Dean Cohen.
We have way too many ideas. That's another whole podcast episode.
Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. And Jordan, you were right. You did set my expectations pretty high, but you've totally exceeded them. Dean, it's wonderful to meet you. And again, thank you so much for your work. I know I'm sure you're very humble, and it's a bit weird when someone's over the top with gratitude, but I can speak on behalf of families to say that what you're doing is life-changing, and thank you. Thank you and your team. I think it's beautiful that you acknowledge them as well. And we'd love to have you back sometime and hear what else you're doing and your ideas.
Absolutely.
So good to meet you.
No, thank you for having me. And if anyone does want to check us out, flyingfox.org.au. Unfortunately, the waiting list might give some people headaches, but feel free to send us an email and reach out. And we'd love to keep building our community and figuring out how to support as many people as possible. So thanks for letting me share our story.
Till next time. Thank you, Dean.
Thanks, Dean.